Ladies and gentlemen, we turn the page in talk radio at 9:34 as we thank you for tuning in. And we go from national heroes to local unsung heroes, two of whom are here in the studio with me right now. Reverend David Lima, who is the Executive Minister of the Interchurch Council of Greater New Bedford, and Peter Muse, who has brought such success to First Citizens Federal Credit Union in a very unique way and for a very unique reason, folks. His M.O. is, well, quite frankly, blessed. And to both of you, welcome. Nice to have you here.
Good morning, Phil. Thank you very much.
You bet. Peter?
Great to be here as always.
Reverend, always a pleasure, and I mean that. At the bank, are you the president and CEO?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Only in title. You know, It functions so much better when I'm not there. I have a great team, a great management team, and a great staff. So it does allow me to actually be in the community more often, and it's a big part of what I think First Citizens is. And I'm really not kidding. Is that I think it functions so much better when I'm not there, as I'm not tying people up. So they're able to do their jobs, but it's a great team.
Well, you have such a great management style, and here's why, Peter. It all starts from the top down, and you have inspired, you have infused in your fabulous staff there a sense of giving back to the community that I believe does a lot for economic development, because it is very much a foundation that gives back to community and builds business at the same time. For that kind of leadership, you have to be congratulated.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Reverend Lima, we have, all three of us, we have slept outside, or we say slept. I didn't say, did you sleep?
No.
No one slept that night.
It was too cold for me, quite frankly, to sleep. And I know Dave and I spent almost all that time.
No, we did. We spent the whole night.
Yeah.
We spent the whole night talking, and everybody that tried to sleep and couldn't sleep came and joined us all night long. So we always had this ongoing group of people, at least 5 or 6, talking. But I think that was one of the most important parts of the night too, is actually discussing the difficulties that we were feeling on an only 37-degree night.
Right.
37 degrees sounds awful when you're, like right now, it's cool outside and we're in our coats, but when you're doing it overnight, when you're doing it because you have to, when you're doing it because there's no roof over your head, and recognizing that night, everybody who was so miserable that night, recognizing that the shelters would not open unless it got 20 degrees colder than we were, I think opened up a lot of eyes.
Yes, and that message drove home a very important one in our community, that not only do we have a problem here that we can address locally, but that there are people and organizations doing something about it. Talking is fine, but putting action behind that talk is what I call brilliant. So what brings us together, folks, is an old tradition. Stan Lipp, who very much was a moderator and a community leader who was on the air and constantly brought community into the station and used this radio station as the kitchen table that we all surrounded around and had our coffee and donuts and talked about the problems. Stan Lipp continued Quarters for Christmas. That was actually started by Hal Peterson. And we are going to revive that Quarters for Christmas tradition. And Peter Muse and Reverend David Lima are here because we're going to be at the Dartmouth Mall on December the 5th, this Saturday, in the afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock, collecting quarters for Christmas that in turn will be given to a very special cause.
And we can't thank you enough, WBSM, of selecting Rise Up for Homes as the beneficiary charity for this holiday season, for what you're doing. Rise Up for Homes has come together with a discussion from Reverend Leamer and Kyle Alves as the executive, well, I guess the chairman.
He's the chairman.
Chairman of the HSPN, which is the Homeless Service Providers Network, and he's also the executive director of Packer.
Right.
We got together for some ideas as to what could we do for a winter drop-in support center. And you know, that we've had that around New Bedford in the past, and I think David has said at different times last year there were 60 people in particular nights, and everybody remembers what last winter was like. And if you can picture 60 people huddled in spaces. Now, when I said this to many other people, it's not 60 people at a cocktail party where they're discussing whatever's going on. It's 60 people who are in need. Shelter, food, some cases medical help, whatever it might be. And that shelter has done a great job, run by volunteers. Sometimes when you have 60 people together who have issues, they could have social issues, they could have medical issues, physical issues, whatever it is, that can also be a dangerous situation. Young families, just think about what that might be. So when we had when the winter turned to spring, you started saying, we probably don't want to have that same situation again. What can we do? And through far more creative people than myself, when I look at Dave and Carl and Leslie Poole and my director of marketing was involved.
Wonderful director.
Oh,
love Leslie.
She's phenomenal. So we had conversations around building a sustainable program instead of a one event type thing, and that was that became the development of Rise Up for Homes, and that's the concept and that's the marketing plan. And when Leslie started putting it together with her team and where that would go, she had a suggestion. There's others that do. I think it's Bishop Stang High School.
Does it.
They have a night out with the students, and Leslie had some conversations. I walked into her office one morning, and she said, "What do you think about kicking this off with an awareness of a sleep out?" She referred to it at that time as a CEO sleep out. I said, "It's a brilliant idea," and then her next response was, "Well, thank you for volunteering." I said, "Well, why couldn't you have thought about this in July or August?" Very selfishly. So I think from there, she, by emails, presented that idea to David and Carl, and I mean they jumped on it right away and immediately said they would be participating, and it just kind of grew from there. And we use that as the awareness kickoff, and yourself and Chris
Gazelle at Fund 107.
Yeah, came, and then we went down the list. Mayor Mitchell, Representative Cabral, almost all the city council members volunteered. And what we wanted to do, and we certainly know, actually we came in here and talked about it, it wasn't to replicate a night out of homelessness. It was, as David has mentioned, an opportunity to pull some people together and have a conversation. Maybe change some people's thinking. And as you remember, we had 4 testimonials that night. People we had lined up that have gone through the homeless program. We actually had a homeless couple that stayed and slept out with us that night, and another gentleman, Rodney, if you remember.
Sure.
So there was opportunity to go one-on-one. If people wanted to have that conversation with somebody, how did it happen when you liked? I mean, there's a curiosity. Another one that we had that was phenomenal was when Mobile Loaves and Fishes.
Oh,
And
yes.
I'm thinking of
George
Bailey came, and his ministry. And we all remember gathering around the canteen truck for coffee and hot chocolate.
That's right.
And he said, "This is exactly what happens when he pulls in." So there was a reality opportunity for a lot of people who, quite honestly, have a lot to do with how the program's going to go in the city. So we felt it was a very successful first experience.
Peter Muse, CEO and President of First Citizens Federal Credit Union, along with Reverend David Lima, the Executive Minister of the Interchurch Council of Greater New Bedford, are joining me this morning, ladies and gentlemen, as we're going to ask you to support Quarters for Christmas. All of the money raised this Saturday at the Dartmouth Mall, in turn, will be given to Rise Up for Homes. And this is what our guests are talking about now, the need in our community and how your quarters are going to translate into, hopefully, a lot of blessings for many people locally. As I said, we can talk about things that happen in our community, but doing things that brings it to another level, right?
Definitely, and this is one of those areas where we all think somebody's doing something to take care of somebody. And then this is also one of those areas that gets sensitive because people say, well, if they're out there on the street, it's because they want to be out there on the street. They won't conform to societal norms. And some of that's true. The fact of the matter is, and I think that's what really helped people understand a lot of things, that homeless awareness night, the one night out, was the people that showed up that we weren't expecting, the Rodney and the young couple that came. When we see somebody who's intoxicated or high on the corner, we judge them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we walk by them quickly. Sometimes we, oh, why do they have to be here in front of everybody?
Yeah.
But he showed up and he started talking. One of the things that I thought was a huge blessing, again, the work that you and Gazelle did from Fund 107, was the interview that you did with the two couples. They were honest with what their own failures were, but they were also honest about the challenges they were having in trying to overcome those failures. And quite frankly, I think that's our issue to raise up. It's the difficulty that people have, that when we have a failure, if we're not giving them a hand to come out of these problems, they stay in the problems.
Sure.
And if we don't make a way, then it's our fault and our problem. We can point fingers all we want, but unless we open up that hand and grab hold, you can't help somebody. So in this particular case, that's what the attempt is trying to do.
In all of your years of serving the public in the way that you are, have you noticed that judgments or knee-jerk reactions usually are roadblocks to trying to help and solve an issue? Do these things block us from actually doing the right thing? If we're going to judge, at least let's judge them inside where it's warm. Rather than, you know what I'm saying? Is it fair to say that, we all have opinions and judgments, but if we could reserve those until we can help these people, and then perhaps, our eyes do widen, because there are so many millions of different stories.
I have never, let me put it this way, probably in all the time that I've done any of the work that I do, there are many people that judge. And again, it's easy to judge. We've all done it. I don't want to put myself above that either. But I have yet to find someone who has taken the time to talk to someone about their personal story who hasn't walked away affected and realizing that, there is something that we need to do. We need to help these people. We need to do something for them.
Right.
Once you allow it to become personal, and I think that's one of our safety catches. We don't want it to be personal. It's not my problem. Because once it becomes my problem, it becomes my responsibility. And truthfully, for humanity, it is our responsibility.
Amen to that. It truly is.
One of the once you get past that part and of where the responsibility goes, then it happens. The next question you ask, but what can I do? Right? What can I do? I have this theory, and I've shared it with Reverend Lima, that the initial what we used to call volunteerism has changed. The definition of a volunteer hasn't changed, but volunteerism. Previous generations would say, somebody needs me, I'll join this organization. Would it be a fraternal organization? Would it be a church? Whatever. They just give the time. I think the current generations and certainly the most recent ones, they don't do that. They don't reach out. They don't join organizations that would do that type of thing. You just ask the Rotaries or ask any of the, you can remember the Elks or anything like that. It just doesn't happen that much. But I do think that most people will say yes if asked. So where volunteerism used to be me coming to you saying, what can I do to help? That part doesn't happen. But if I go to you and say, I could use some help with this project, very few people will say no. I do think that that's the goodness of people. But we've lost that initial part. That world's changed a little bit. Right. People are busy. And it's not an excuse, it's probably a reality. They're busy, their times are busy, they relate with their kids and family very differently, but they generally would be involved. One of the tenets of what we were trying to build with Rise Up for Homes was to give people that opportunity to get involved. Now, whether it be initially connecting through the website, Rise Up for Homes, whether it be a donation through the website or through the text opportunity through, I think it's 501, we have it here, 50155, that's the number, and if you just use the words Rise Up, right, you can make an easy donation. Now, I'm asking people to do that. They may go right ahead and do it. We'd also like them to go to the Dartmouth Mall on Saturday. It's that time of year where people could do it just as easily. And there'll be people there to talk to. And if you'd like to get more involved, not just with your treasure, but with your time and talent, there's opportunities for that as well. I think that people would be interested in that. The drop-in shelter needs volunteers. It needs to be run by professionals, right, with people with, when I say professional, they're trained in the social work. But there still needs many hands to help out with that. So there's opportunities for people to get involved.
So Peter and Reverend Liam, if I'm hearing you correctly, the monies that we're going to be raising for Quarters for Christmas donated to Rise Up for Homes initially will be used for an emergency shelter on these nights that are very, very cold.
Very, very cold. In the city of New Bedford, through the Sister Rose House, run by the Catholic Social Services, has a nightly shelter, men's shelter and female shelter. I believe there's about 26 beds in the men's shelter on the 8th Street, and there's about 9 beds down on Division Street for the females. Eventually, it will all be down to Division Street, the former St. Hedwig's Lady of Guadalupe Church. But they're still finishing up the reconstruction. That will be our primary emergency overflow shelter. This is what we're referring to. It's the overflow when the weather is super bad, super cold, hurricanes, things like that. That's where those, because those initial beds are filled almost every day. And as you get into winter, they're definitely filled every day. So the overflow shelter is open for those people who, in the extreme weather, we're trying to get them safe so that we don't find, and that has happened in the past where we found somebody who's passed away during the night. Last year, we were way over the limit because of the super cold weather, the super bad winter we had. Mm-hmm. So that's why we had to come up with a new plan this year. So Catholic Social Services down on Division Street will be the primary once it opens up. But until then, PACA is going to be opening up as our primary so that when that weather goes out, and we're looking at different ways of getting out the word so that whether it's a flag system or something, the shelters will be open. We're already talking to volunteers about being able to get people collected to take them down there because people have been used to having something downtown. But it won't be downtown. It will not be at Pilgrim this year, okay, due to different difficulties that occurred. So the fact of the matter is, we're working all this out, but it does take finances. This is going to be a private government type operation, but Rise Up for Homes is the one that's helping to supplement this and put it all together. And the training that Peter talked about, if you go to riseupforhomes.com later on today, we'll be announcing that training for volunteers. Anybody that wants to volunteer to help with the shelter, there will be a training. You will need to go through that training. You will need to be quarried, because we want to be protective and we want to make sure everyone has the training necessary.
This is great. And Peter, can you just elaborate? We have a minute left on how folks can be a part of this.
I think that right now the initial contact would be to go to the website.
Okay.
riseupforhomes.com.
Yeah.
That's all the information is readily available. That's the audience that would be most involved in either volunteering or donating, quite frankly. The easy donation can come off of the cell phone that I mentioned, 50155, texting that. But that's for a donation. The information is on the website.
Wonderful. We hope to see all of you at the Dartmouth Mall Saturday, 1 o'clock until 5. Come out there, join us, show us that you care. Help us support our community folks who, some of them, if not for us, I don't know where they would be if not for people like you, Peter, and like you, Reverend Lima, and devoted people who care about what happens in our community. Last word?
Phil, you mentioned David and I, but don't leave yourself out. It's people like you that are actively involved, and I can remember the conversations we had. It might have been 3 a.m. in the morning, but it was very much appreciated what you have done for us in the program, and what WBSM has done as well. So I include you at the top of that list, sir.
Thank you. What an honor. Thank you. We're all the spokes of a wheel.
Amen.
As we thank First Citizens Federal Credit Union. Now you know why, folks, it's such a success. And we thank you, Peter. We thank you, Reverend Lima. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. I'll be right back to wrap things up.